Hello and welcome to the Baseball Wisconsin podcast. I am your host, Tim Gotzler. Now, as promised, we're bringing the lefty to close this game down. We headed up north to Webster to bring in left-hand pitcher Jarrod Washburn. Now, Coach Washburn is currently the head baseball coach at Webster High School, where he's won back-to-back state championships in 2018 and 2019, the last two seasons the WIAA held. Before that, he spent 12 years playing professional baseball, won a World Series in 2002. Back to his college days at UW Oshkosh. He, as a redshirt freshman, he pitched a complete game in a 6-2 victory to win the national championship. And then after his third year of school, was the 31st overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft. So, arguably the most storied athlete in Wisconsin baseball history, was fortunate enough to sit down with us today and to talk about the ins and outs of his career, what it's like coaching his own sons, and also coming back to Webster, his hometown, and building a dynasty up there. So I know you're going to love this conversation, as he also goes into the championship teams he's played and coached on, and so much more. One more reminder to subscribe and share this episode, as this will be our last one of the season. Without further ado, head baseball coach at Webster High School and 12-year Major League Baseball veteran, Jarrod Washburn.
Hey, Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming on today. Hey, for those who don't know you, just give us some background. Where'd you grow up and play and coach?
All right. I'm Jarrod Washburn, coach of Webster Tigers. And I grew up right in Webster, moved here in fourth grade, went to high school in Webster. And from there, I went and played college ball at UW Oshkosh. Got drafted after my third year of school by the Angels and made it to the big leagues. That was in 95. I got drafted, made it to the big leagues in 1998. Played there for through the 2005 season, then signed a 4-year deal with Seattle Mariners. Right at the end of that deal, they traded me to the Tigers for a couple months, and then I retired after that season. So I got just under 12 years in the big leagues. After that, came back home. My wife is also from Webster and graduated high school here. So we came back and raised our kids here in Webster. And I took over the job as a baseball coach, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago now. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, there's so much more there, but you're a humble guy. So I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. So your playing days, like you've played at all levels, won World Series, College World Series, Major League, MLB World Series. Now you're coaching high school and in your hometown. I mean, it's a great story. It's a great Hollywood story. Like, as you think about your coaching hat now, like, who has influenced you the most? The coaches along the way that you see yourself in and as you mold and develop who you are as a coach?
Well, it started right with my high school coach. It was Rusty Helen back when I was in high school at Webster. And he was a huge influence on me as far as teaching me the game and just being a great friend after high school. And I even talked him into when I came back and took the job as a coach at Webster, I talked him into coming back and helping me a couple of years. So for that first state championship run, he was on the coaching staff and a big part of that. So, he was huge in all of my baseball life. And then from there I had, Tom Lechner. He was a great coach, still a great friend. He would, even after I left college, he would call me at midnight sometimes after I'd pitch and have a rough game or something, be like, "Hey, you're breaking your hands late on this," or some little mechanical flaw I was doing or whatever. And sure enough, I'd fix it. And the next month or so, I'd be locked in again mechanically. So, that was another one of the coaches that had a huge influence on me. And then when you get to the big leagues, guys like Mike Sosha, huge influence, great manager, great coach, great guy. Joe Madden, Buddy Black, those guys are, that staff we had with the Angels the year we won the World Series. We had Sosha was our manager, and Joe Madden was our bench coach. Buddy Black was our pitching coach. Ron Rennick, he was our third base coach. So that's 4 guys on our coaching staff that ended up at some point in their careers after that winning a Manager of the Year award in the big leagues. So pretty special coaching staff that I got to play for on that season, and each guy had their own little things that they had to offer, and learned a lot from all of them.
That's what I'd like to just jump in a little bit. So you went through high school, college, professional coaches, some huge names on there. Like if you go back to high school, like what lessons did he teach you when you were a high school student, high school player that you think are still with you today, or maybe that you use in your program?
Just different things like respecting the game and working your butt off every day, and not taking anything for granted. He was one that taught me, as we got into the coaching, that never assume a kid knows anything, whether it's no matter the littlest, most, obvious detail that you think everybody that plays baseball knows. They're kids, so never assume anything. So always make sure you cover every little single detail, and just drive it home. And fundamentally, you got to do, hammer down the fundamentals to make sure you have a successful program. So that's a couple of the things that he really helped instill in me.
You talk about you go to Oshkosh. Tom Lechner, is a name you hear all over the state of Wisconsin, for obvious reasons. But the guys that didn't play for him, the guys that didn't have that experience, who didn't get those midnight phone calls after an outing, like what was it about him that maybe the most as a coach?
Just his intensity was obviously, I think, is well known. He was an extremely intense guy, loved to win, and it was always attention to every little single detail. We spent, he kind of was in charge of the pitchers, so being a pitcher, we spent, I don't know how many hours in my college career in a dance studio with a room full of mirrors, and just going over all your mechanics, and just over and over and over the repetition. So it just became second nature, and things like that he would, just make sure that you had down. And it was that. And then it's just, the attitude of, hey, we're the best. We're going to go out and show you. And that was kind of one of the things that when we were in college, we took on the field, and we went out there with a lot of confidence, and I think it definitely helped us win.
All right, so you win a national championship at Oshkosh. Second round draft pick. You get into pro ball. Like, what are the biggest differences between, college baseball at that level or any level, and then transition to pro ball? Like, what doesn't the average guy know, the average coach know about that transition?
I guess the fairly obvious things are the mistakes almost never you get away with. Each level of minor league ball, once you get into pro ball, each level you go up, you're allowed fewer mistakes. And I think if you're a hitter, you have to be able to be successful, you have to be able to capitalize on any little mistake. So I don't know if that's something that the average fan doesn't know, because that seems like it's a fairly obvious answer, but it's a grind. I know that's something that you look at it from afar and think, oh, that's the greatest lifestyle in the world, be a pro ball player. But when you start out and you get drafted, and the first team you go to is Boise, Idaho, and you're on long bus rides every day, and going to little towns and staying in crappy hotels, and not getting paid hardly anything in the minor leagues, it makes for a long, hard road. But if you love the game and keep working hard, and a couple of bounces go your way, it might all work out.
Well, that's great. And obviously you mentioned, on that Angel staff, those amazing guys, and so many people along the way, like from pro ball, what are the biggest lessons that stand out to you that you bring back to your role as a high school coach? Like, what did you learn at that level on the coaching side, dealing with men, dealing with professional ball players, that you learned from a Mike Sosha or other guys that you mentioned?
I think the biggest thing I took like from Sosha and his staff is just how important team chemistry is and how important it is to stay loose and have fun. And I mean, Soch and Joe Madden, after he left there and then went and took manager job, those guys are famous for some of the crazy stuff that goes on in spring training just to create team chemistry and keep things light. And we'd have team meetings every morning in spring training, and he would have guys stand up and introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves, and he'd always try to find out their hobbies and things. And then he'd come up with some crazy off the wall, like some guy would said, "Yeah, I like to cook." He's, what's your favorite thing to cook? And they'd say, chicken fajitas, that's my specialty. And he's like, all right, well, next week you're going to go buy enough ingredients and you're going to cook chicken fajitas for the entire team. Well, spring training, there's like 75 guys in camp, so that's quite a task. But I mean, he was always doing stuff like that. And one guy liked racing remote control cars, and so we ended up having a pit crew and 2 teams created, and we had this huge race on the field. And Percival was he took the other car, and so me and him were on one team, and we ended up going and finding this professional driver to come in and drive for us. And I mean, it was fun. Just stuff like that I brought a live ostrich into the clubhouse one time because he sent me and a couple of guys to the ostrich festival because he felt like he was tied down with games and wanted to go see it, but his hours of work wouldn't allow it. So he wanted to find out what the ostrich festival was all about. So I found a guy who owned the ostriches, and we brought one right into the clubhouse that next morning. So I mean, stuff like that it kept the team light, kept everybody laughing, kept everybody loose, and allowed you to just relax and go out and do your job a little better. So everybody got along and everyone had fun. So we've tried to take that into our high school team and do fun stuff and keep everybody light. And one thing I really try to stress with the kids is every single kid, no matter how good you are, you're going to fail more often than you are going to succeed. And so we just I try to make sure and tell them, hey, there's times you're not going to be good. But if you get down on yourself and worry about me going to be mad at you, don't worry about that. I'm not ever going to be mad at you. And if you get down on yourself, you're just going to make your job harder in the future. So we really stress that and be positive and learn from your mistakes and move forward and never look in the rearview mirror.
Well, I'm glad you brought it back to Webster, because that's where I wanted to go next. I want to just give us the scope of baseball inside of Webster. Obviously, you grew up there, you've come back there, and everything along the way. Like, how does a kid start playing baseball at Webster? Get us from that early age all the way through the high school. What does the community baseball look like?
Well, that was when I first retired. That was my older boy he was like around 10 or 11 at the time. So I kind of started coaching their age kids and working with the youth and trying to build a program through the youth. And that's the biggest reason that our high school program has turned into such a strong program for us, is just having such a good youthful program going right now and working hard on, just teaching the fundamentals. We've had, since I've moved up the ranks and then became a high school coach, we've had just constant every single year. It seems like different parents are stepping up and coaching and helping do this and that. It's just kind of been a seamless transition from one year to the next, as far as just people stepping up and giving their time and wanting their kids to be the next kids to be coming into the high school program and be successful. So yeah, we got, organized baseball starting with, I think third grade is, I think, when actually they start playing games, but we have T-ball going from kindergarten on up. And then when they get into third grade, they start playing games against other towns around the area. And we try to get them, as many games as we can and push them as much as we can. And one thing I always tell the parents is, at this age, I don't care if you win a game. It's not at all about winning games when they're kids. It's about teaching them the right way to play, learning the fundamentals correctly, and then that'll transition into them being a good ball player when they get to high school. And then that translates into the winning. So we really, really try to pound the fundamentals. And another thing I do is I make sure every single kid on every team in the youth program pitches. So that's the very first year I took over the head coach. We kind of were going through practice the first couple of days, and the kids, the two best kids on the team, arm wise, while playing catch, I'm like, hey, you got a great arm. You're going to pitch for me this year. And both of them said, well, I've never pitched before. I'm scared to pitch. I don't want to pitch. So from that point forward, I'm like, hey, every kid's got to pitch. So I don't want them getting to high school, having a good arm, and then all of a sudden go, well, now you have to pitch. I want them to grow up pitching and being comfortable with it. So that's what we do. And then this is a personal feeling myself, is every single kid, when they learn how to pitch, when we teach them at a young age, they 100% of the time throw out of the stretch. And then I don't ever let a kid throw out of the windup until they get to high school. And just that's simply because, in my opinion, 99% of every important game defining pitch you're going to throw in your career is going to be with guys on base. So I want you to be with guys on base, not at all thinking, man, I wish I was in the windup. I'm not comfortable out of the stretch. So in my opinion, if you grow up throwing out of the stretch, then that's going to be one less thing in your mind you're thinking about when it's time to make that big pitch.
Now, I want to stay there for a little bit. So do you have kids when they get to high school? Do a lot of kids stay in the stretch for all 4 years? Do some kids want to work the windup? Like, how do you make that decision when they get to high school?
I leave it up to them at that stage. They all grow up watching TV and, wanting to have a crazy windup like the big leaguers and stuff like that. So I let them try it. It's all personal preference, and then we just decide as between me and that player, if that's something that is going to work for him or if it's not. And, honestly, I'd say it ends up being about 50-50 as far as about 50% of them just say, nope, I'm staying stretch. I'm going to just pitch out of the stretch. This is how I'm comfortable. And then about half of the other ones say, I want to try the windup. And out of those, it ends up probably being about half of those that the windup works just fine for him, and others it's not. My oldest son, Jack, he was I got to go wind up. I can throw harder out of the windup. Well, you can't, but you think that. And it ended up being where he'd be out of the windup, but he'd walk the leadoff batter every time anyway. So it took a while for me to convince him that maybe you shouldn't go out of the windup. So, but he ended up getting pretty good at it. And now I think he's tweaked a few things and finally did something in the windup that I told him he should do all along. And it's working good for him now, he said.
That's great. So you now we're into high school, right? The kid has come up, youth program, third grade, out of the stretch, high school. Now, how many teams do you guys have? Do you have 3 teams? Do you have a JV2, a JV1, and a varsity, or do you guys just carry 2 teams?
We just have 2 teams, and we end up with just probably barely enough to have the JV and the varsity team. It's pretty small school. Our enrollment's about 180, and we get about between 20 and 24 kids out a year is right about it. And then when you add in grade issues and suspensions or whatever else you end up running into that every coach out there's had to deal with, that there's times that we got 18 kids that can play, and JV and varsity are playing at the same time. So you hope for no injuries then.
What's amazing, we on this show we've had coaches that have a school that's got 2,000 kids, and they have 90 kids coming out for baseball. So they have a really structured tryout procedure and the grading out process and evaluations, and they're cutting sometimes 45, 50 kids. So for you,
nice.
So for you, like, how do you run your tryouts? I mean, do you guys just go right into practice mode because you're keeping everybody? How does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. There's no tryout. It's that first day of practice, we jump right in and we start teaching. and start working and hoping that that every single kid that's there that day finishes the year with you. So that's about it. And almost, I still have never in my coaching career had a first day of practice outside. It's been in the gym every single time. This year, I'm thinking we might get lucky because of the later start. So we should be okay this year, I'm thinking.
Well, and that's, I mean, I think the guys in the South right now are starting to realize, you know, if you see on the news, right, the guys, as we're recording this, it's February 16th and there's snow in Texas and they don't know what to do. But, you know, us here,
Right.
we've spent most of our baseball lives in a gym. So obviously growing up in Webster, going to Oshkosh, like, how do you best maximize the indoor space? And I don't know what your facility is like, but like there's guys that do it really well and guys that don't. So I'm assuming you're someone who does it really well. Like, how do you structure an indoor practice?
We end up having to really try to get creative because we end up with, if it's spring and it's indoor, we have 2 gyms. We have a big gym with a divider that comes down, and then we have a smaller gym. So the smaller gym is where the batting cage is at. And we end up having girls softball, baseball, and track are indoor practicing in the spring almost all the time. So you end up having to split those 2 spaces into 3 teams, which makes you get real creative. We use hallways in the school for infield drills as far as, you know, rolling balls back and forth and working on footwork and hands and stuff like that. Different spots on walls with wiffle ball hitting drills. We try to maximize the space as much as possible. We do our long tosses in a gym, but end up not doing it together because you can't get long. So you do it into the divider in the middle and simulate a long toss. We do end up with, if we're early in the season where it is all 3 teams, we will always go at least twice a week at 6 a.m. practice, just so we get all that space to ourselves and we can actually spread it out, get a infield set up so we can run through pickoff plays and bunt coverages and things like that, where you need the space to actually go through it. But yeah, you have to get real creative when it comes to using gyms, especially gyms as small as ours, and having to share them.
No, there's no question. And I appreciate you sharing that. Kind of getting into your program more, obviously, got through tryouts, we get into the season. You talked about, from your days playing with the Angels and the culture Mike Socha created, like, are there things that you guys do systematically to create that chemistry, to create some fun, things that are unique to your program?
I wouldn't say, anything specific. Each group of kids seems to be different. With Jack's group that graduated 2 years ago, they had, there was, 4 really strong kids in that class, and 3 of them were real strong leaders. So I told a lot of people that year that they were seniors that'll be the easiest coaching job that maybe any coach has ever had. I really didn't have to hardly do anything. I'd show up to practice and those guys would take charge and, hey, let's do our warm up. Now we're going into these drills, those drills. And it was, we would have fun and laugh occasionally, but those kids were so focused on getting back to state, trying to win another state championship. And all the young guys just kind of followed them, and it was easy for me. But now this year is going to be a little different. We got my younger son is a senior now, and he's got another kid in his class, or two others. So there'll be 3 really strong seniors, and so they're just going to have to kind of step into that leadership role, and we'll see where that takes us. But like I say, every group of kids is different, and you got to kind of adjust and decide what will work best for each kid, and come up with creative things to make everyone laugh and have fun and keep them loose.
Well, one thing I've noticed in just talking before we started recording, in a school your size, you have a lot of multi-sport kids.
Right.
Almost every kid. So I'd like to hear what you think the benefits are in there. And it sounds like you just have a very competitive group. You know, these high-level, ultra-focused kids are usually extremely competitive. So I'd like to hear what multi-sports do to your kids, and then like kind of how do you create competition in your program?
I think within the program, the competition kind of creates itself as far as past success, and then the kids just wanting to be a part of that and wanting to be able to put their stamp on future success. So, you know, with past successes, all those kids just want to continue that and not let the drop off come with them. So that, I think, itself drives the kids to want to get as good as they can and win jobs and those sorts of things, to where that kind of, as far as competition for each individual, just drives them. They don't want to be the ones that the drop happens with. So the multi-sport thing is, I've always said that's huge. You know, there's so many benefits to just kids being able to go out and play multiple sports, as far as learning different skills, teamwork things, allowing different muscle groups to be used, allowing different muscle groups to be rested that are overworked during certain sports. You know, stay away from the burnout of one sport just being too much of a burden and having it done too often. I could go on and on and on, I think, about the benefits for this, for just the kids being able to do multiple sports. So, I mean, we got kids right now, almost all the kids are in either hockey or basketball, and that'll be winding down here, and depending on how long playoffs goes, you know, in plenty of time for them to then, you know, take a little bit of time off and then have plenty of time to ramp up and get ready for the baseball season, as opposed to years past where it's kind of been a basketball's done, baseball starts next week type of thing. So that's, I think, you know, COVID has created a lot of difficulties for everybody in many different aspects of life, but I think this is one positive that it has created for baseball coaches, I believe, in the state of Wisconsin, as far as the later start to the season. I think is I don't see any reason why it is a negative. Weather in Wisconsin, as we all know, sucks, especially in the northern half. So starting late like this, hopefully the weather will be more of a spring season, and we won't be playing on frozen fields and snow in the corners. So those types of things, I think, are a benefit for us this year.
Well, one thing I'd like to touch on is, and you kind of went there, is with multi-sport athletes, they're working different body parts, different muscles, different types of coaching, but they're also getting a rest. And I'm guessing we're talking about arms. And, you know, down in other parts of even the state of Wisconsin, we're seeing burnout, higher injury rates, kids throwing year round. Like, what's your philosophy? And has that changed over time from maybe when you were growing up and playing at that age and where you are now? So if you want to just go into, you know, maybe the year-round calendar, obviously you can use your sons as examples if you'd like. What's your thought process there?
Yeah, I have no problem using my sons, and that's kind of what I tell all the kids here. And Owen, he's like I say, he's a senior this year, and he's going to be going to the next level, and he got recruited both as a hitter and a pitcher. So his arm obviously is very important, and he's doing exactly the same things Jack did a couple of years ago to get ready. When they'll play their spring season, they go into summer ball, play a summer ball season, end up with quite a few games under their belt for the year. Both of them did a little bit of fall ball things throughout the years, but as soon as that fall ball season is done, they shut it down totally arm-wise. They won't. So say they play until right around the 1st of October, they'll take October, November, and December and not touch a baseball. The only time they're touching a baseball is if they go out and hit balls in the cage. They touch a baseball to put it in the bucket so they could throw it back in the cage. But throwing wise, they're totally shut down for about 3 months. And then it's doing your arm exercises, doing the little job exercises or band exercises and things like that to work the little muscles in the shoulder, keep them in shape, rebuild them after the breakdown of throwing so many innings over the summer and spring and summer season. And then once that New Year's hits, then they'll start gradually working back into throwing a little bit and getting their arm in shape. And it's a really, really gradual process into the spring season. So I think it allows them not to have to rush and then build the arm strength correctly. And knock on wood, I've never had a kid have to sit out for our high school season because of an arm injury.
Well, and I'm glad you went there, because Dr. James Andrews, right, 2 to 3 months off. That's where a lot of the data is. But I feel like a lot of guys get caught up into, do you totally shut it down for the fall, for our example, fall, winter, or do you just stop pitching? There's guys that'll continue to throw year round thinking, I just got to keep it lubricated, I guess is one way to think about it. Or guys that, they need to just don't touch a baseball at all. So you're of the camp that don't touch a baseball, give that full rest, 2 to 3 months, pick her back up after New Year's.
That's my thought. And that's how I was when I played. It worked for me. And I'm definitely not up on all the science. And I know there's a lot of data out there now and different schools of thought. And I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong. I'm just saying it works for me and it's worked for my boys. And it's worked for our high school boys at Webster. So it's, again, I think that's just like everything else in life. Different things work for different people. And I used to play with, something like ice in your arm after you pitch. I played with guys that they had to ice every time. And I played with guys that said, oh, if they ice, they'd be sore for a week. So it's throwing's the same exact way. Some guys would, they take a week off and then they start throwing again in the off season. And I always thought they were crazy, but it's what worked for them. And, some guys would always stay healthy by doing that. So obviously that was the right thing for them and their body. But I think all the muscles, especially for a young kid growing up, need that rest and need to be able to recharge and regenerate. And it's, they're growing so much at that age that, I think it just needs that time off.
So just on the pitching side, you've been in that sphere for most of your life. How has pitching changed? I mean, at the highest level, you keep hearing about, guys are throwing harder than ever, but they're throwing more off speed than ever. Throwing out of the stretch. There's a bunch of different organizations that are popping up all over the country. And, if it's weighted ball training or J bands or Jobs or anything else, how has pitching changed over time? And I'd like to know where you started and kind of where you are now and what you see in that landscape.
To be totally honest with you, I don't watch any big league ball at all anymore, unless my kids happen to have it on in the summertime, which we hardly have TV on in the summer. So any big league news or highlights or anything like that is all through my kids. So I'm not really maybe the best to answer that question. I know when I do watch a game, I will watch some playoffs because playoff baseball is just great to watch. But I know for a fact, it's definitely crazy when you see these games and the radar guns up there, and it seems like every single team has a guy that throws 100 now. And I think it's just like anything else. Everything's evolved with training and different techniques for building strength and all that. But, I think the arm injuries are up a little bit too. So I don't know. I'm sure that goes hand in hand, but it's just, I'm not sure exactly what their thought process is on the more breaking balls. I don't watch closely enough to know exactly what they're thinking there, but I can tell you I'm not really an analytics guy. I'm more of a old school type of guy, and I lived and died with my fastball. I know when I played, I I I remember 2 games the year we won the World Series in '02. I came back after the All-Star break and my arm was feeling really fresh. And I would throw about 85 to 90% fastballs every game anyway. But I had 2 games right after the All-Star break and my fastball felt good. It had extra life. And back then they didn't have anything to do with spin rate or any of that, but I must have had fairly good spin rate because I would throw 88 to 92, 93, and guys really never squared it up that often. But I threw a game, I went like 7 innings. I threw 104 pitches and 102 of them were fastballs. And that game I gave up 3 hits and 1 run. And then the next game I threw 8 innings and I gave up 4 hits and 1 run. And I threw 109 pitches and 104 of them were fastballs. So I was a fastball guy. And I still believe that now, that kids should just throw their fastball for a strike. That's the best pitch there is. And if you can locate your fastball, you're going to be successful.
Love it. All right. I appreciate that. And some of those numbers are just amazing. You think about, like you said, gripping 109 pitches and 104 fastballs. Is that what it was? In 8 innings?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So, like, were you getting ready to pitch a season? Obviously, you had the shutdown, but like when you was time to build up, were you more of a long toss guy? Would you go out to 350? Would you stay at like 180 and just stay on top of the baseball? Like, what was your long toss program like?
Well, back then it was same thing. It was in the gym. So I really didn't know how far I was going because I was pretty much doing it into a net by myself. But yeah, I loved long toss and building the arm strength through that. So, that was my entire career. That was how when I did start playing catch, I'd, gradual into it and get into that long toss to where I was, 15, 20 minutes of firing it as far as I could basically, and building the arm strength and getting the arm in shape that way.
All right. So as we talked before, I want to pivot here a bit into just the teams you've been on. So, I mean, very few people get to win the last game of the season at any level, and you've done it at every level. So, like, what is it about championship teams? Like, if you think about, even just take you back to college, D3 World Series champs, like, what was it about that team that made it so special that you thought maybe clicked at the right time, or if it was all year, that led you guys to hoist that trophy?
I think it starts away from the field, and obviously every team that wins a championship has talent. There's that. I don't even have to cover that. But two constants with every single team that I've been a part of that won a championship was confidence. And that means confidence in yourself, confidence in your teammates, confidence that you're the better team. And then the team chemistry part. The team chemistry is huge. A team that loves each other is willing to do whatever it takes to win. And that whether that be if you're the cleanup hitter and you're asked to bunt, I don't care. If it helps our team win, I'm going to bunt. If it means just sacrificing yourself and giving up the run or yourself so you can move a runner over, different things like that. Little things that no egos ever get in the way, because the only thing you really care about is all those other guys wearing the same uniform.
All right. So confidence, chemistry.
Yep.
Kind of a sports psychology. I like reading up on it. I'm a social studies teacher. I'm into it, fascinated by it. Confidence is something I always want to learn more about. Like, in your opinion, how does one build confidence? Because I feel a lot of high school kids, they ride their previous at bat, they ride their last outing, and that determines their level of confidence. So,
no question, absolutely.
Right. So how do we change that?
Well, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I start day one of practice telling every single kid that he's going to fail and making sure he knows it, and he has to prepare for it and be able to not let that affect the next at bat. And when I'm coaching third base, every single game, I bet I say it 50 times a game. I'll say it to the pitcher when I'm on the dugout. I'll say it to the batter when he's at the plate, I'll say it to a kid in the field who just made an error, but I always yell next pitch. And I always want him thinking about the next pitch. I don't ever want him thinking about the previous pitch. And that is one thing I preach in practice and in games. And, you know, I always tell them we're always have to worry about the next pitch, because you can't ever go back and change it. All you can do is realize what mistake you made, try to learn from it, try to move forward. And, you know, if you prepare them every day for knowing that they're going to fail, I think it allows them to deal with that failure a lot easier.
Just got me thinking, right? Mental game. We think Ken Ravizza, was he with the Angels?
Yeah, I knew Kenny well. Great man.
Give us something from Ken. Obviously, passed recently. Like your experience with Ken Ravizza.
Okay, every single pitcher on my team knows the name Ken Ravizza, because I talked about him a lot and the psychology of it and all that stuff. And he was big into the reason they know about it is because I make sure every single pitcher on my team has an imaginary toilet on the back of the mound. And this was directly from Ken. And he would always say, when the crap happens, when you make a bad pitch, when you give up a homer, or when just crap is going bad, you just take a deep breath, walk to the backside of that mound and flush that toilet. Just flush all the crap down and then move forward and go on to the next pitch. So yeah, that's definitely a valuable thing that Kenny taught me, and I've tried to pass that on to all the youngsters.
That's great. Appreciate that. I just feel like that is, I don't know, one of the later trends that coaches are finally getting into at all, even down to the high school level, is the Ken Ravizza work. You know, if it's heads up baseball or Brian Kane, and getting into that side of the game. So I appreciate that. I know you don't watch a lot of Major League Baseball, but I do wonder, like, what are you working on? What have you learned recently about, maybe it's skill development, maybe it's something your kids are going through in their training that's made you rethink how you taught something, or made you, switch a little bit on something you do inside your program?
I really don't know if there's anything. I mean, we make little tweaks here and there to different drills we'll do. But, I can't really think of anything that I've seen in the last year or so that I'm like, oh yeah, we have to rethink how we're doing this, because that's much better and I see why. I'm not saying I have all the answers, and I'm not saying everything I'm doing is right, but I haven't really changed the way I'm teaching it all lately.
Well, I got two more questions for you. One is, it's more of a statement. Like, baseball in the state of Wisconsin means a lot to you. I mean,
Yep.
So when I bring up baseball in the state of Wisconsin, like, what comes to mind?
Underrated for sure. These last few years with my boys having some good talent in the game and being able to play this club baseball with, for the top teams in the state, for like GRB and Sticks and things like that. And then Hitters, they're another great program. My boys haven't played for them, but they played against them a lot. Just seeing the amount of very, very talented kids in the state just makes me cry that the Badgers don't have baseball. Because I know, personally, I know a lot of the kids, and they've gone on to, SEC schools or Pac-12 schools or Big 12 schools, big time D1 schools, and talking to a lot of them or their parents over the years, and it's almost every one of them are like, yeah, he'd go to Wisconsin if they had baseball, and so it's a shame that they don't, but yeah, I think it's starting really to get recruited a lot harder, but it's been underrated for a lot of years, for the amount of highly talented baseball players that we have in the state. And it's good to see that we're getting a lot more publicity nowadays and activity, because, kids like Kelnick a couple years ago in the first round, and the Vukovic kid last year was drafted really high, and Gavin Lux. And I mean, we're getting, legit studs coming out of the state. And it's cool to see.
Well, and you could be doing so many things after your career, and you choose to coach high school in your hometown in northern Wisconsin. So, as a state, I think that says a lot about you. Last thing, like if you could leave other coaches who listen to this with some advice, as they are maybe getting into their seasons here, new coaches or veteran coaches, what comes to mind if you could pass along some advice?
Biggest thing is just keep it fun. I mean, it's a hard game, and kids get frustrated easily. And, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier when I was talking about how I try to stay positive and keep it light and get kids to not be down on themselves. But if you keep it fun and try to allow it to be a relaxed atmosphere, and then the kids will have fun, and then the kids will do better. The more relaxed they are, the better they're going to do. And I think it's your job as a coach to create that atmosphere that a kid is allowed to fail and not have to worry about getting benched or getting yelled at about it and things like that. So that's important.
And there it is. Huge thank you goes out to Jarrod for taking time out of his busy schedule to sit down with us today. To my knowledge, he's the only guest that has his own Wikipedia page, the measure of success on this podcast. No, but on a serious note, I want to thank you to the listeners who have tuned in for the 14 episodes so far. We are going to put a pause on the podcast as the high school season is cranking up, while college baseball is in full swing, and we turn our attentions to all the great things in the game of baseball across our state of Wisconsin. Thanks once again to the listeners and the guests and everyone who has taken time to send a message, if it's an email or a text or a DM. Your support has been outstanding. And until next time, have a great rest of your day.